Two houses sit on the same street, same fence line, same thick evening air. In one yard, a family is already swatting their arms, retreating toward the door before the sun finishes setting. In the other yard, same night, same mosquitoes, same block, someone sits outside for hours without a single bite. No fence, no zapper, no expensive setup. Just a $2 secret almost nobody has heard of. And it does not work the way ordinary repellents do. It is not one trick. It is two, running at the same time, and only one of them ever shows up in a spray bottle. Watch that same yard for more than one evening and the pattern never breaks. Same swarm, same hour. Same patch of grass feeding mosquitoes into both properties at once. And yet one family disappears indoors by 7:30 while the other sits outside until the porch light clicks on by itself. Nobody over there is swatting at anything. Nobody is reapplying spray every 20 minutes. They are simply not part of the equation the mosquitoes are working off of. Think about how strange that actually is for a second. These are not two different climates, not two different soil types, not even two different mosquito populations. It is the same swarm, drawing from the same breeding ground, hunting across the same fence line on the same humid night. Whatever is different between those two yards has nothing to do with luck, and everything to do with a system one household stumbled onto and the other never learned existed. That is not an accident. Meanwhile, next door, the cycle repeats every single night. The candle gets lit. The candle burns down to nothing by 8 p.m. The zapper hums for hours and catches almost nothing worth catching. The cycle resets again tomorrow, the same way it has all summer, and nobody on that side of the fence has stopped to ask why none of it is working. There is no hidden fogger running on a timer next door, on the quiet side. No professional contract nobody mentioned. No fence line treated with something exotic. What is happening in that yard is two separate problems, solved at the same time, through two completely different mechanisms, and almost everyone has only ever heard of one of them. Here is the first. Mosquitoes find you through smell, carbon dioxide from your breath, lactic acid on your skin, heat coming off your body. A female mosquito tracks all three from yards away, the same way her species has tracked warm-blooded targets for millions of years. Most repellents try to mask that smell. This does not mask it, it floods it. The compound at the center of this overloads her receptors until they stop reporting anything true at all. And instead of finding a meal, she retreats, confused, chasing signals that no longer exist. It helps to picture what that actually feels like from her side of things, if a mosquito could be said to feel anything at all. Every signal she has ever relied on, the warmth, the breath, the faint trail of scent drifting off skin, suddenly arrives scrambled, overlapping, pointing nowhere useful. She is not avoiding the yard because something hurt her. She is avoiding it because the yard stopped making sense. That compound is catnip oil, the same napetolactone that turns a house cat into a rolling, drooling mess on the kitchen floor. To a mosquito, it is the opposite of relaxation. It is chaos. Her chemical navigation system, the one she has relied on her entire life, simply stops working the moment she gets close enough to detect it. Researchers testing it directly against DEET found it performed several times stronger at equivalent concentrations, and almost nobody outside that one study ever heard a word about it. Here is the second, and it is the half almost nobody mentions. Confusing adults only solves what is already flying tonight. Somewhere within 200 feet of nearly every backyard in America, standing water is producing the next generation right now, and a spray bottle does nothing to that water. The quiet yard is not just repelling what already hatched, it is cutting off what is not hatched yet. One without the other is only a temporary fix that fades fast. Both together is the reason that yard stays empty for an entire season, while the other family keeps buying spray after spray, wondering why nothing ever sticks for more than a few days. So here is exactly where this starts, because the first half takes less than 5 minutes to put together, and it costs almost nothing, One clean spray bottle, the kind already sitting unused in most garages. Into it, 20 drops of catnip essential oil. Not the dried herb, not a cat toy, the actual essential oil, sold for a few dollars wherever a store carries a natural health aisle. Add 2 cups of water. Add 1 teaspoon of dish soap, which matters more than it sounds like it should, because without it the oil simply floats on top instead of mixing in. The soap pulls everything into one solution that disperses evenly when sprayed, instead of clumping into uneven droplets that drift past the mosquito entirely and waste half the bottle on the first few pumps. No synthetic chemical with a warning label, no active ingredient that needs a permit near a vegetable garden, just oil, water, and the same dish soap already sitting under most kitchen sinks. That is part of why none of this looks like a system to anyone walking past the quiet yard. No truck in the driveway once a month. No tank strapped to anyone's back. No smell of synthetic spray drifting over the fence line into the next yard. Just a small bottle, refilled a few times a season, doing a job an $11 billion industry charges hundreds of dollars to do worse, and doing it quietly enough that nobody walking past would ever guess that was the entire difference. This is the point where most people would stop and assume the bottle is the whole answer. It is not. That mistake is exactly why so many households try something like this for a week, get frustrated when the mosquitoes come back, and quietly give up. The bottle handles the adults flying through the yard tonight. It does nothing to the eggs sitting in a forgotten bucket, a clogged gutter, a saucer under a potted plant by the back door. Treating one half while ignoring the other is the entire reason natural repellents earn a reputation for not really working, when the truth is they were only ever half the system to begin with. That second half is not complicated either. It just requires knowing exactly where to spray, how often to repeat it, and what to do about the water no bottle will ever reach, which is exactly where this goes next, and it matters far more than the bottle ever could on its own. That solution does no good just sitting quietly in the bottle, untouched. Spray it along the patio edge first, down the deck railings, across the porch threshold, around every doorway leading into the house, and along the fence line where the yard meets the neighbors. Hit the base of the shrubs too. Mosquitoes rest in shaded leaves through the hottest part of the day and wait there until evening. Anywhere people actually sit, give it a light pass as well. The mist does not need to soak anything. It just needs to settle into the air mosquitoes are flying through. One application holds for roughly 2 to 3 hours outdoors before the scent thins enough to stop doing its job. After rain, the same rule applies, since water washes the oil straight off whatever surface it landed on. That is the entire reapplication schedule. No subscription, no truck on someone else's timetable, just the bottle, kept within reach, given a quick shake and a few pumps whenever people head back outside. That covers the entire yard, start to finish. The second piece covers the body directly, for protection that travels instead of staying behind at the porch railing. 10 drops of catnip essential oil into 1 tablespoon of a carrier oil. Coconut works well, so does olive, both already sitting in most kitchens. Stir it together in a small container. Test a small amount on the inside of the wrist first, and wait several minutes before applying anywhere else. Once that is done, ankles, wrists, behind the ears, the back of the neck, the exact spots mosquitoes target first because the skin runs thin there and blood vessels sit close to the surface. What should never happen is applying the oil straight onto skin undiluted. It is strong enough to irritate on its own. The carrier oil exists to make it gentle enough for direct contact while keeping the scent strong enough to do its job against a mosquito's senses. That is the first half of the system handled completely. Spray the yard, dab the skin, reapply when the scent fades or the rain falls. Adult mosquitoes flying through that space tonight are dealing with a chemical environment that scrambles everything they rely on to find a target. But adults are only half the story. Every mosquito biting anyone tonight came from somewhere. Not across town, from standing water within roughly 200 feet of where people are currently sitting. That covers almost every backyard in existence. It also means this half of the fix is not something to buy. It is something to find on foot on the property itself. This starts with one walk once a week around the entire yard, looking for anything holding water that has not moved in days, a bucket left out after the last project, a bird bath that has not been dumped since the weekend, the saucer under a potted plant on the porch, quietly collecting runoff every time it rains, gutters that have not been cleared since spring, holding a thin layer of water along their entire length, a tarp draped over the woodpile with a low spot in the middle where rain pools and sits. It is worth slowing down on that walk rather than rushing it, because the spots that matter most are almost always the ones that look the most harmless. A puddle big enough to notice from the porch is rarely the problem. It is the half-inch of water nobody would think twice about, the kind that dries up looking fine and gets ignored precisely because it never looks like a hazard. Add the things people walk past without a second thought. A child's toy with a hollow center, the lid of a trash can, flipped upside down near the side of the house, a pet's water bowl that has not been refreshed in 4 days, the drainage tray under a row of potted plants, an overturned wheelbarrow with a dent that traps rainwater, and the one almost nobody thinks of, an old tire in the corner of the yard, holding water inside the rim long after the ground around it has dried completely. None of this looks dangerous, and that is exactly the problem. A puddle the size of a bottle cap is enough water for a single female mosquito to lay roughly 300 eggs in one sitting. In warm weather, those eggs become flying, biting adults in as little as 5 days. The water sitting forgotten in a gutter this week is producing the swarm showing up 2 weekends from now, long after anyone has stopped thinking about it. A single missed spot resets the entire cycle, no matter how carefully the spray bottle gets used every evening. This is why a one-time cleanup never holds, no matter how thorough it felt the day it happened. The rain comes, the containers refill. The rain comes again, and they refill again. The same way they always will on a schedule nobody controls. A yard checked once in June means nothing by the time August arrives. The walk has to repeat every week for the rest of the season, treated less like a chore and more like checking the mail. Dump what can be dumped. Scrub the inside walls while it's empty. Eggs from certain mosquito species cling to the sides above the waterline and can survive completely dry for months, waiting for the next rain to hatch right where they have been sitting the entire time. Scrub it. Some of that water, though, cannot simply be dumped out and forgotten. A rain barrel collecting water on purpose, a decorative pond built into the landscaping, a low spot that floods every storm and never quite dries. Walking away from those leaves the breeding cycle wide open, no matter how often the rest of the yard gets checked. That is exactly where this goes next. For water that drains easily and fully, dumping and scrubbing always handles the whole problem on its own. For water that does not, a rain barrel collecting on purpose, a decorative pond built into the landscaping, a low spot that floods every storm and never quite dries. A bird bath people actually want to keep filled for the actual birds. There's exactly one product built for that exact situation. It works without poisoning anything else sharing the same yard. It is called a mosquito dump. The most common brand on hardware store shelves is Summit. It looks almost nothing like a chemical treatment. Small, donut-shaped, about 1.5 inches across, floating on the surface like something that fell out of a fish tank kit. Most people walking past it on the shelf would never guess what it actually does, since nothing about it looks like pest control at all. Drop one in, and it slowly releases a naturally occurring soil bacterium called BTI as it dissolves. Mosquito larvae feed on it, mistaking it for food, and die within 24 hours. Nothing else living in that water is affected. Fish swimming in a decorative pond are fine. Birds drinking from the same bird bath every morning are fine. Dogs that wade through a low spot after a storm are fine. One dunk treats roughly 100 square feet of water for 30 full days before it needs replacing. A pack of 6 runs about $9 at most hardware stores, which covers an entire season for most ordinary backyards. That is the entire system finished, with nothing left to add and nothing else to buy. Catnip oil confuses the adults already flying through the yard tonight. The weekly walk removes the water that would have produced tomorrow's batch before it ever gets the chance. The dunk quietly handles whatever water cannot simply be poured out onto the grass. 3 different problems, 3 different fixes, all running at the same time, instead of one product trying to do everything alone and failing at most of it by August. Somebody in the comments is going to point out that catnip oil is not exactly $2 at every store in every state, and they will not be wrong. Prices shift from one region to the next. A bottle might run $3 in one town and closer to $5 somewhere else, depending on the brand sitting on the shelf that week. That detail was never really the point of any of this. The actual $2 secret was never the exact price tag printed on one bottle. It is the idea that almost nobody else on that street is willing to do all 3 things at once: confuse what is already flying, remove what is about to hatch, and treat what cannot be removed at all. Most homeowners do exactly one of those 3, usually the spray, and spend the rest of the summer wondering why the mosquitoes keep coming back anyway. That is the entire difference between the 2 houses on that same street. Not luck, not soil, not a fence line treated with something nobody else has access to. One household is still fighting only the adults, with the same spray can bought every few weeks, spending more money every single season, while the actual number of bites barely changes year to year. The other broke the cycle months ago, treating the yard as one connected system instead of a single purchase repeated endlessly, and now spends a few dollars total across the entire summer while sitting outside every evening without thinking about it once. Pest control companies built an $11 billion industry around treating only the adults because adults are the part people see, complain about, and call to schedule another visit over. Repeat sales depend entirely on the problem never actually going away. A $400 seasonal contract that genuinely solved the issue in one visit would put that same company out of business by the following summer. That is not a conspiracy. That is simply the business model, and it explains exactly why nobody mentions the bucket of forgotten water sitting quietly at the edge of a property line. Run the math across one full summer, and the gap only widens. $15 covers the spray bottle, the carrier oil, and a full pack of dunks with room to spare, lasting from the first warm evening in May to the last cookout in September. $400 barely covers one seasonal contract that still leaves the porch unusable most nights, because it was only ever built to chase adults that keep getting replaced by the next batch, hatching somewhere nearby. One approach gets cheaper the longer it runs. The other never does and never was built to. The neighbor with the quiet yard did not stumble onto a miracle. They did not get lucky with the wind direction, and they did not pay a stranger to figure it out for them. They simply stopped treating the symptom and started treating the cycle, which is the entire difference between a yard people quietly avoid by August and a yard people actually want to sit in until the porch light comes on by itself. And that is really the whole shift in thinking, start to finish. Stop asking what kills the mosquitoes already in the yard and start asking why the yard keeps producing more of them in the first place. Once that question gets answered, the rest of it stops feeling like a chore and starts feeling like something that just quietly runs in the background of the summer, the same way locking the door at night does. It is a small shift on paper, but it changes almost everything about how the season actually feels. A yard treated as a single connected system does not ask for much. A few minutes mixing a bottle, a few minutes walking the property once a week. A dunk dropped into the same bird bath every 30 days without a second thought. None of it demands a weekend. None of it demands a contract, a truck in the driveway, or a stranger walking the property with a clipboard. It simply becomes part of the rhythm of the house, the The same unremarkable way taking out the trash becomes part of the rhythm of the house, until eventually nobody is thinking about mosquitoes at all anymore. They are just sitting outside, the way the evening was always supposed to go before the swatting and the citronella candles and the early retreats indoors became the expected version of summer. That is the version worth aiming for, not a yard defended at all costs, a yard that simply stopped feeding the problem in the first place. Drop in the comments what has never actually worked in your own yard before this, because that list shapes exactly what gets covered next, and it always helps more than people expect. Take care of that yard, and I will see everyone in the next one.